We talking rom-com, we talking action, we talking drama and movie classics. Whatever you want, yo, we have it. Cause we talking movies on the podcast. So I married a film critic. So I married a film critic. So I married a film critic. Hey honey, I just want to talk about the movie like casually. You don't have to bring up the cinematography. Honestly, let's just talk about like how the characters were fun. Married a film critic. So I married a film critic. So I married a...
Welcome to So I Married a Film Critic. I'm your co-host Julia.
And this is Barry Wurst, the film critic. Hello, everyone.
And tonight we are going to do a more controversial film. The 1999 Stanley Kubrick movie, Eyes Wide Shut.
I guess this should come with a warning because when we first started to do this show, I had a list of movies I wanted to cover, and this was near the top of my list. And Julia said, "Oh, absolutely not. No." And I said, "How come?" And it was actually a really good conversation because your hesitation to do this as an episode kind of reminds me that I'm very relaxed in my praise of this movie, and that's always been something
very relaxed.
That's always been something that's gotten me in trouble, and I'll elaborate more about that later. But this is a challenging film, a disturbing film. It is a controversial film, but it's not easy watching, and to say the least, I love that we have listeners, and we want to keep our listeners entertained and engaged.
All 12 of you.
All 12 of you. We love you. The Dirty Dozen, you're the best. But the thing is, I know some of you are just listening to this for entertainment value, which is fantastic. And some of you are doing the thing where you see what we're talking about and you watch the film and then you listen to us. So I guess I want to, say that don't always feel like you have to see the film, but obviously we want you to. But Julia reminds me, and it's a good reminder, this movie, the amount of nudity, stark sexuality, and the intensity and the disturbing nature of this movie make it a tough one for a lot of people.
Yeah, it's not a film that I personally recommend. If it's something that you've seen or are just curious about on your own, fine. But it's not one I want you to hear me talk about and say, "Oh, Julia recommended that." No, I really don't.
And on the other hand, I highly recommend this film because I don't care what your hangups are. I want everyone to encounter great art. I want everyone to encounter great films. Sometimes great art is disturbing, troubling, and confrontational the way this film is. So I make no bones about it. I love this film, but I realize that even when this film came out, or I should say especially when this film came out, it was a very divisive subject, and it continues to be, even though over time people have turned around on their thinking about this movie, but it's still one of the most controversial films Kubrick ever put out, and he put out quite a few of those.
So I was going to talk about one of the first reviews of yours that I ever read in college. Actually, I don't think it was the first one, but I started reading our school paper pretty much only for Barry's reviews before I ever met him. And I remember him giving this film a glowing review, and I had never seen it at that point. And I was like, who is this guy? I have heard very weird things about this movie. And so that was kind of one of our first interactions when we actually met in person was, are you that guy? Are you that film critic guy? And, oh, you like Eyes Wide Shut?
Yeah, that was one of the first things you ever said to me, actually. I mean, I guess I should say my relationship with this movie is long, and it's weird because I was a senior in high school. I was about to graduate, and Tom Cruise was on the cover of Premiere, and it was to promote the first Mission Impossible. This is back in 1996, and in the interview, Cruise let it drop that he had just made this film for Cameron Crowe, a little sports comedy, and then after that, he and his then-wife Nicole Kidman were flying to London to spend 6 months or so making the new Stanley Kubrick film Eyes Wide Shut, and at the time, the only thing we knew about the plot was it was a story of sexual obsession and jealousy. And for the next 3 years, that's all we knew about the film. And throughout my college years, I became obsessed with this film because clearly it was not going to be out within a year. Clearly, the filming of this thing just went on and on and on. It's still in the Guinness Book of World Records for having the longest shoot, which was 400 days. That's a long time. The joke of it, and this is actually true, apparently Tom and Nicole's kids were in here in Europe for so long they came back to America with British accents, and This is one of these films, like, I still have it somewhere in a box, I'm sure. I had a file of clippings I could find of like whatever was spilling out from this movie. And a lot of it was rumors that ended up not even being true. I remember one article saying that the film is called Eyes Wide Open. And I'm like, ooh, it's a scoop. No, actually the reporter just got the title wrong. So when this film finally came out in 1999, I mean, for one thing, it was like, wow, July 16th. That was the summer of The Phantom Menace. That was the summer of Tarzan, Blair Witch Project, Spy Who Shagged Me. It was a big, big, fun movie summer. And this was the one, all my buddies were like, yay, Star Wars Episode 1. And I was like, no, man, Eyes Wide Shut, the new Kubrick film. I could not wait for this film. And I saw it opening night with my dear friend Ben. Hope you're listening to this, Ben. And we were so dazzled and disturbed by it in equal measure on opening night. And on the other hand, I knew, even walking out of it the first time, this is a masterpiece. This doesn't feel like any movie made this year, let alone this decade. There's something special. There's something strange. There's something unspeakably mesmerizing about this movie. And for me, it was an easy, this is clearly the best film of 1999. And as the months went by, I realized, oh, no one agrees with me, especially people who had not seen this film and declared it to be pornography, a blue film, or some awful movie that was really of their own making.
So
that's when you and I met, because this, and I don't necessarily want to name drop where we went to school, but we were going to a very conservative Christian private college. So, to say the least, my rave review in my school paper about Eyes Wide Shut
go down well.
No, it put me at war with the dean of students, who's about to retire, so he'll never hear this. Hopefully not. But it made for a long couple of months after the film came out. I actually had a couple of people stop me and ask me, why are you condoning pornography? Why are you telling people to see this? Blah blah blah. And my reasons have always been pretty much the same, although my views of the film have changed. But I think the film is just about perfect, and we'll get into that.
Let's talk about it, because this is one of your top 10 best of films of all time. So
favorite.
So even though I was a little reluctant at first to talk about this movie, I thought, what the heck, let's just do it. I think this was my third time seeing it. I really can't remember.
I think it's probably like my 10th or 12th. It's somewhere around there. Mm-hmm. Do you regret suggesting that we watch this?
No, I don't regret it.
Did you enjoy watching it last night?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, enjoy, I don't know. Let's just talk about it, because I think there are things about it that are interesting and intriguing, and it brings up some good discussion topics, but I don't know that it is an enjoyable experience for me.
Okay.
Because it's so weird.
And again, like, on the one hand, I'm just like, look, whoever you are, if you're interested in this film, if you want to see a great film, disturbing or not, see it. It's a fantastic movie. Don't go your whole life without seeing Stanley Kubrick's final movie. On the other hand, for those of you who have a sensitive disposition, you're shocked by the sight of areolas or Nicole Kidman's buttocks, then you know what? There are other films to be watching than Eyes Wide Shut. So, final warning.
Okay. All right, so the opening of Eyes Wide Shut is Nicole Kidman's buns, speaking of what you just said. So
to speak about this film in a very scholarly, intellectual way, yes.
Yes. Getting dressed for a party.
And her back is to us. Yeah, it's such an unconscious and unshowy moment. It almost feels like a found moment that wasn't even intended to be in the movie. And, every time I see a Kubrick film, my eyes always go to different places. In this case, I was looking at a pair of tennis rackets on the side.
Yeah, he's like, go back. What are those? What's that tennis racket? I'm like, you're really looking at the tennis racket?
Is that a detail we need to know?
And
what are you telling me, Mr. Kubrick?
Not her butt.
Well, I've seen this film at least a dozen times. You gotta mix it up. Your eyes can't go to the same place every time.
Oh, okay. All right. So it's Christmas time, and
New York City.
The movie reminds us of that because there is a Christmas tree in almost every scene. Yeah. And they all look the same, all these Christmas trees. Did you notice that?
Yeah.
They're all decorated with the same lights.
Fairly accurate, though. I mean, I've been to New York during Christmas time many times in my life.
No, but even in people's homes, they all look the same. nobody decided they wanted to do a white light tree that year. I mean...
What do you think that means, Jules?
I mean,
what do you think Mr. Kubrick is telling us?
I don't know.
Is there something interchangeable about the way we celebrate Christmas?
Maybe.
There you go.
All right.
All right. Well done, Mr. Kubrick.
So, Tom and Nicole, who are Bill and Alice.
Dr. Bill and Alice, Harford, yes.
They are heading out to a party. So, they're getting ready, getting dressed, putting on deodorant, going to the bathroom, talking to the babysitter. They have a daughter who's 7-ish.
Around that, yeah, Helena.
Yeah.
And the apartment is covered with art. It's a welcoming, cozy environment. Hermetically sealed, but I never felt claustrophobic in this apartment. I always thought this is a lovely place. It's lived in. It's kind of their world. I dig it. You don't like this apartment?
No, I love it. I mean, he's a doctor. Of course it's nice.
Well, I mean, I've been to doctors' homes and I think, oh, really? Dogs playing poker? Really? I mean, this is a nice apartment.
You're like, wow, such generic art. Is that what you think?
I've been to some doctors' houses and I thought, I thought you guys made a lot more money than this. No, I really.
Wow. Maybe they make a lot of money, but they invest it in other ways.
Well, look, let's be clear. Like, this isn't like my Dr. Vac guy I used to see as a little kid who used to give me a lollipop every time he gave me a shot. This is Dr. Bill Harford. They live in Central Park West. They clearly have some very highfalutin clients, including the individual whose home they go to, Victor Ziegler, played by the wonderful, the late, the great Sidney Pollack.
Mm-hmm.
And they go to his home, which is spectacular and covered head to toe with lights.
I don't know where this house is in New York, but it's massive on the inside.
Well, I mean, let's talk about the lighting fixtures.
Is it his house? Yeah, I mean, he has a
think
ballroom.
It's his house.
Then he has a ballroom and a bar?
I think it's his brownstone, I think. And I mean, look, the thing is glowing with lights.
How does he have a ballroom and a bar in his house, though? This can't be his actual house.
Well, I mean, if Eddie Murphy can have a bowling alley in his home, why can't this guy?
All right.
And, I want to say, it looks like the place was decorated by Clark W. Griswold because it's just covered in these beautiful glowing lights. It almost looks like it's on fire. It's radiating so much light.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so they look great, and they're going to this party, and she's like, do you even know anybody here? And he's like, no, but this is like one of the perks of making house calls. So... yeah, they're at this party, and then she needs to go to the bathroom, so they separate. And this is where it gets interesting, because Dr. Bill sees...
Oh, it's always been interesting. This movie opened up with Nicole Kidman's butt. I am already interested in the movie.
Okay, so he recognizes the piano player as a guy he went to med school with.
Yeah.
So that's Nick Nightingale, and they're both like really excited to see him. Okay, this was one of the moments in the film where I thought Tom Cruise is being real Tom Cruise-y, because him and Nick are just like patting each other and, hey bro, good to see you bro, and Tom's big laugh, I felt like he is more Tom Cruise than she is Nicole Kidman. Like, I feel like she has more of a character than he does, but that was just my initial impression from that.
I disagree. I think what's being portrayed here is that these guys had a lot of fun in med school. I think it's like, oh, bro, remember the time we put that cadaver in the dean's room? Oh, high five me, bro. Oh, remember the time we went in that panty raid in the nurses' quarters? High five me, bro. Woo, med school. I think they had a lot of fun in med school, and they're like, oh my God, it's you. It's the party, man. It's Nick and Bill. We're back together again. Woo.
It's Nick and Bill.
Yeah. That's the Eyes Wide Shut prequel I want to see, by the way.
Oh, okay. So... all right, so we establish that Nick is back in town and he's going to be there for a while and come see him. And then Alice goes to the bar, and this is where she meets this dashing Hungarian guy.
Sandor Szevast. I'm Hungarian. I'm like, yeah, Hungary, represent.
Represent. And she's like drunk, and she's like, I'm Alice. I'm American.
My name is Sandor Szevast. I'm Hungarian.
My name is Alice Harford. I'm American.
Delighted to meet you, Alice. Did you ever read the Latin poet Ovid on the art of love?
Didn't he wind up all by himself, crying his eyes out in some place with a very bad climate?
But he also had a good time first. a very good time. Are you here with anyone tonight, Alice?
With my husband.
Oh, how sad. But then I'm sure he's the sort of man who wouldn't mind if we danced.
Okay, so their whole interaction is him flirting with her, and she's really just kind of like falling all over him, but they're dancing, and he's flirting with her, and he definitely wants to take her upstairs and have a quickie.
And just to remind you, this is not Tom Cruise. This is the Hungarian Sandor, who towers over her. He's a very invasive, intrusive sexual presence.
Mm-hmm.
The first thing he does to get her attention is he drinks her champagne right in front of her unapologetically. He makes it very clear what he wants from her, and he is following her around this dance floor like she is a sheep and he is a carnivorous wolf.
Following her? No, they're dancing and he's leading, and she.
Yes, but I mean, just the visual. I mean, it's very much a stalking kind of seduction, I'd say.
Yeah.
Even though, yes, they're dancing, but I mean, no question. I mean, he is in pursuit.
Sure.
I think that's the visual Kubrick is trying to suggest here. The film opens with a waltz. The music, the music is always in that sort of tenor for the most part. But this is a case where it's not about two partners in coupling. This is a woman, holding on for dear life, where this guy is, really oozing his way all over her.
Yeah, and he's like, why would you want to be married? And she says, why wouldn't I? And he's like, oh, it's that bad? She's like, or it's that good. So then that kind of gets into a thing about, it's this theme, right? About marriage and can you trust the person that you're with, and why would you want to be married when you could just like have as many sexual partners as you want?
And it's about the bond of marriage too. What are the rules of marriage? Are there things that remain or go away after you've been married for a period of time? It's been established they've been married for, didn't they say like
10 years,
something like that? Yeah, 10 years, and their daughter's about, I think, 8 years old. So it's established, they're comfortable with each other, and of course, I don't really want to get into the real life baggage, but of course at this point, Tom and Nicole have been married for nearly 10 years. This was near the ending of their real marriage.
I don't want to talk about their real relationship.
Yeah. No, but just to make the point, because Kubrick clearly cast these two on purpose, not only for their box office draw, but this is their third film together. And despite what a lot of critics said about the film at the time, they do have chemistry together, but it's not a romantic chemistry. This is about, the film is about a couple who they don't completely grasp what they have. And over the course of the film, they're sort of realizing the value of the life that they have with each other, as well as the comfort and the safety that they take for granted. So I agree with you. I do feel like the movie from start to top to bottom is about it's about bedroom intimacy, not the sexual aspect of it, but what people actually talk about behind doors, what's really going on, the unspoken things about whether married couples lie to each other. Should they lie to each other? Should they have fantasies? I don't know that this film has any answers, but it brings up a lot of questions, and some of them are very troubling, obviously.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And while Alice is dancing with the Hungarian, she notices Dr. Bill with two models, and she is like, oh, there he is with these very attractive women. But Dr. Bill is whisked away by Ziegler, who has a problem, but Alice doesn't know that. She just knows that he's been gone for a very long time.
Right.
So in the back of her mind, she's thinking, all right, here is this guy flirting with me. My husband is flirting with these two women. I don't know where they went off to. And so now we have this a setup for a deception and betrayal type of thing, because they don't know what's going on.
You wonder if it's always this interesting when the Harfords go on a date. Are people constantly coming on to them? Because, on the one hand, we get it. This is Tom and Nicole in 1999. They both look younger. They look spectacular. They've always looked great. But clearly this is an attractive power couple, if you will, because they're obviously wealthy and well taken care of. At the same time, it's almost a bit exaggerated in this film how nearly every person they encounter
wants to sleep with them.
Yes, it's almost always a sexual come on in their case. But this is the beginning because, again, this, to be clear, for those of you who haven't seen this movie, we're not talking about little flirtation. I mean, this is very
blatant.
Yes, very deliberate form of flirtation. So Dr. Bill is whisked away into Victor's private quarters, and it turns out he has a naked prostitute who has passed out from drug use, and Bill has been
he's asked to make sure she's
summoned,
okay.
Yeah, summoned to make sure she hasn't died at his party, and obviously this is a moment of indiscretion, or rather that Victor does not want his wife to know about this happening right now.
Yeah, because she's right downstairs.
Right
Hello.
downstairs, yeah, when this is happening. And clearly there was, clearly this was a sexual encounter turned bad, if you will. So it's interesting because during this scene, Bill is not making eye contact with Victor. He is strictly in doctor mode, and he's doing everything he can to be calm, but also revive the patient. And he basically does it just by talking her through it. And the scene would almost seem to be something of a non sequitur, but it's very important because it's Bill establishing the bond that he has with Victor, and also establishing that these are two individuals with a moral compass that they are willing to compromise.
Oh, that Dr. Bill is willing to compromise?
They're both kind of slimy in this situation. It's, Bill is doing the right thing, if you will, by being a doctor, but he's putting himself in a situation where, I mean, he has no moral high ground. The fact that he's even a part of this and willing to take part in this, there's something slimy about him in this scene. Well,
what was he supposed to do? I mean, Victor calls him upstairs to make sure that this girl isn't dead. And what's he
for starters, how could you? Your wife is right downstairs. What have you two been doing?
Oh, well.
You allowed her to inject heroin and cocaine during your sexual encounter, and you expect me to bring her back to life. Why doesn't she have any clothes on yet? Why are you still standing around naked? Yeah, I think there's a few questions.
No, I mean, I understand that, but I think he has established this pattern with Victor already. I doubt this is the first time this has happened.
Oh, you think this happens every time? It's like, oh, God, it's Victor's birthday again.
Well,
Son of a gun. I got to go over there and revive another hooker.
I mean, I can't imagine that this is the first time something shady has happened with this guy.
Got to practice my hooker reviving speech again. Okay, look into my eyes. Can you hear my voice? Okay, no. Clap your hands. All right. A happy hooker is an alive hooker.
Stop it.
Merry Christmas.
No.
God, I hate going to Victor's house.
Well, I mean, maybe not this exact scenario, but there's no way that
Victor, I liked it better when they jumped out of the cake. Okay, this is just, I hate this so much. All right,
because he tells Alice this is one of the perks of making house calls. What do you think all these house calls are?
Bill, look under the table. Ah, another dead hooker, Victor. Oh, I swear to God.
Yeah. No, I'm telling you, this is not the first.
It's interesting. I never thought of that before. So you think like this is something that keeps happening?
Not this exact
maybe with
thing.
With this particular lady, you think?
No, because he didn't know her name.
Well, let's be honest. Does he ever ask?
You don't. Yes, he does ask her name.
Does he?
Yeah, her name's Mandy.
Yeah, he needs to know her name when she's almost dead, and Bill is in the room. But I'm saying, like in most situations, you think.
Well, I don't think that Victor is being exclusive with Mandy as like the only hooker he's with. No, I don't think that. But so who knows if
I do wonder that because without jumping the gun.
Well, okay, yes, she
right.
becomes a pivotal character later on.
She does. Yeah.
So maybe, but the way that he talks about her at the end of the film, he's just like he doesn't care about her like that.
Or does he?
Well, maybe. Well, okay.
All right.
Now you're making me question things.
Well,
which this movie makes you do.
Well, this is Kubrick. As anybody who has studied or discussed The Shining a little too much, Kubrick leaves a lot of possibilities. He's not ambiguous. He just leaves clues. And where you think there's empty spaces, where you think there's no definite explanation, there are possibilities. A lot of people kind of go overboard with this. They say, oh, Kubrick, it's because of that ridiculous documentary where it's like, Kubrick did the moon launch and he proved that the Aztecs were right. Like, it was all these ridiculous fallacies within that documentary. But it was very well made, a very entertaining documentary. And I think people just want to believe in conspiracy theories. So like, yes, Kubrick did put a man on the moon. And I think that's really overstating it. On the other hand, this was a brilliant man in intellect. Can I tell my quick Kubrick story?
Sure.
In fact, I met Keir Dullea 20 years ago. Keir Dullea was the star of 2001: A Space Odyssey. This proves my point. So Keir Dullea told me this story, and he's told other people this story. I'm not the only person to hear this, but he kind of privately told me this story about Stanley Kubrick.
I only want exclusive Kubrick stories.
Well,
just kidding.
I don't know how many people know this story, but I felt really, really honored that he told me this story. He said, he made the film 2001 in 1967, 68, and it came out in 68. So 2001, he's an astronaut. He's on a spaceship with Hal the robot. To put it in very simple terms, Hal the robot turns bad, turns against the spaceship. It becomes a war against Hal and this character, David Bowman, played by Keir. So Keir Dullea gets a letter decades later from this guy saying that he's a chess champion. And the chess champion, I guess he was from Harvard or Stanford, some high mucky muck. He writes Keir Dullea a letter and says, hey, I'm a fan of your movie. I love 2001. By the way, did you ever notice that in the first scene of the movie, Hal the robot is cheating? Did you ever notice that? And Keir's going, no. So he manages to get Kubrick on the phone. And Kubrick at that time was making Full Metal Jacket. He calls up Stanley Kubrick and says, hey, hope you remember me. I was in your movie 20 years ago. And Kubrick's like, hey, yeah, of course I remember you, Keir. How you doing? What's going on? And Keir Dullea asked him, hey, I got this letter from this fan. He pointed out that Hal was cheating in the first scene of the movie. Are you aware of that? And Keir said it was a very long pause. And Kubrick said, of course I'm aware of that. And he hangs up and never spoke to him again. So with Kubrick, there's always details. It doesn't mean that it necessarily points to the great unsolved conspiracies of the world, which I think people want to pull from Kubrick's films, The Shining in particular. But there's always possibilities in his films, which is why I tend to look at the edits. I tend to look at the placement of the art direction. There's a lot of mystery in his films. And sometimes we blame, the performances aren't that good or the story's vague. No, it's all there. We just have to look, I think.
What do the tennis rackets mean?
What do those tennis rackets look? I'm not distracted by your butt, Miss Kidman. I want to know about those tennis rackets.
Okay, well, we missed a key thing. Before Dr. Bill goes up to Victor's upstairs to deal with the gal.
The two models.
He's like, so where are we going? I mean, they're totally flirting. And they're like, we're going to go where the rainbow ends. And that ends up being kind of coming back later. And he's like, the rainbow? I mean, he's acting like he doesn't know what this means.
Yeah, and I was in college when I saw this, I know what that means. Those girls are dirty.
Okay, so then that's
when he's whisked away to help Victor with his problem.
His problem. Okay. With
his hooker problem.
Yeah.
And we should point out, obviously, that the prostitute, whose name is Mandy, survives. And it ends with this very awkward, although very brotherly moment where Victor says, I don't have to say this, but you're going to be discreet about this, or you're not going to tell my wife again. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Okay, so the next day they have.
You're not going to skip over the mirror scene, are you?
Oh. The mirror scene. Okay, please stop. This is embarrassing. Okay, so Nicole Kidman is naked in front of the mirror. Tom Cruise starts making out with her, and she is watching herself. Is that the...
Yeah, the mirror scene. It's set to Chris Isaac. Yeah. Okay. No, nothing. You write any notes for that scene?
No. What did you write?
Nothing. What did I write down? I wrote down mirror scene.
I mean, it is the cover.
It's a great scene.
It's the cover of the DVD.
When they promoted this movie, that was the teaser trailer they showed, just that scene, which was no wonder everybody thought this was going to be the most expensive X-rated movie ever made. Yeah, and it was the cover of every magazine. It's the poster of the film. Yeah, it is.
Yeah. Nicole Kidman just being very infatuated with herself.
Well, what does it mean? We watched a film not long ago called The Mirror Has Two Faces, and now we have someone who's staring at the mirror during this moment of intimacy. Is it about our duplicitous side? Is it about the duplicitous self that we have during marriage? Is it that she had this sexual encounter with this Hungarian, that maybe mental sexual encounter with this Hungarian, that she's now carrying out physically with her husband? What do you think?
I don't know.
These are two people who are very turned on from these encounters at this party that went nowhere, and then now they're home with each other, and it's Chris Isaac time. You know what that means.
Okay, so you're saying they got turned on by other people.
And I think she's getting turned on watching herself being ravished by Dr. Bill.
Oh, well, I mean, as one does, I guess.
Well, this is one of the few times like she's not in a nurse's outfit. I'm sure it's a lot more to this on most normal nights.
Yeah. Okay. I mean, we can come back to this if there's
Oh,
more,
Dr.
but-
Bill, I have a headache. Doom, 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 doom. Dr. Bill's like, all right, you're playing Chris Isaac. I know what that means.
I know what that means. Okay. But they have a montage of their day the next day where he goes to work and you see him at his office. Alice is at home with their daughter. It's obviously Christmas break, you know. So.
And to you know, because I'm clearly not in like film professor mode tonight. Yeah, there's quite a bit of nudity during this montage, which is I think was really jarring for a lot of people. I remember even in the theater, people kind of like laughing uncomfortably. People were not prepared for the amount of nudity in this film.
Oh no, I don't think anybody would be. It's just
Really?
It's all the time. It's like every other scene.
Oh, okay.
Almost.
All right. Clearly, I don't have a problem with that, but
Okay. So we're just establishing, I think, their just normal daily lives. You know, yes, Dr. Bill has to check, you know.
the memories of very attractive women, but there's always a nurse present.
There you go.
As he
Okay.
notes later on.
Yes.
He also sees a little girl and gives her the candy cane, and he's like, oh man, my 3 o'clock's coming. Bill, I suspect that not only is this Central Park West, I suspect like this is where some of the famous people are, you know, I'm sure he has some supermodels, and I'm sure the film is making a point to show that, because this is a guy who can control himself, or seemingly so. This is a guy who
Control himself in quotes, because we don't know
as a doctor.
him
As a doctor.
yes.
He's a
Yes,
legit
as a
doctor. He's not a creeper doctor. He's not the doctor from The Hand That Rocks the Cradle.
Oh yeah. No.
Okay, he's a family man, and he clearly relishes that role. But the question is, how much of it really is a role, and when does that role stop?
Mm-hmm. Okay, so then the next night, this is when it gets interesting.
As I wrote in my notes, Alice goes to the medicine cabinet and goes to the Woody Harrelson section and pulls out a little doobage.
Okay, so they're just smoking pot in their bedroom and getting high, apparently.
Apparently,
Yeah.
I'd say this is from like the Willie Nelson brand of.
Yeah,
This
yeah.
this is clearly like the most amazing, mind blowing marijuana.
Yeah, definitely. So they start talking about the party the night before, and she's asking him like, "Oh, where were you with those models?" Right? I don't remember the exact like.
Well, the conversation gets very naughty and very very unguarded for the both of them.
Right, but he's basically saying, "Okay, I know you would never cheat on me because I have faith in you, even though yeah, other people find you attractive, but I know you would never do something like that." And she just gets really offended.
Before we get to that, I got to say a very key part of this exchange, and I somehow I didn't catch it until last night. There's a lot of things I catch every time. I catch something new every time I see this film. But he lies to her about Victor. He says, Victor was sick. I was upstairs with him. She's for an hour. Yeah, I was up there for an hour. He was sick. And, rather than explain, look, I did not have a 3-way with these models.
Oh yeah, because she's like, where?
Even better, I was helping Victor with his nearly dead hooker problem again.
Yeah, because she's like, did you F those models?
Yes.
And he's like,
and to be clear, listeners, there's an F dash.
Well, yeah, but I'm not.
We don't want to get censored.
I don't want to get an explicit thing on our podcast.
So anyway, my point is that he lies to her, and then moments later he says, "I would never lie to you."
Oh, yeah.
It's subtle, and I love that, because the characters in this movie are not. This is probably the scene where the acting is the most demonstrative. Everything is very reined in.
Okay, so this is the part, because he's talking about men and how men are, of course, all they're thinking about is sex. Like, of course that guy wanted to sleep with you. Like, you're a beautiful, sexy, attractive woman, but I know you would never do that. And she's like, okay, but what about you? And he's like, well, no, I would never do that. And she's like, what makes you an exception? You just told me this is all men think about. So why are you different? And he said, I love you. We're married. I would never lie to you, which, okay, he just did, right? And she says, well, what makes you think, I don't want like just a one night thing? Like, what makes you think I don't want to just like have sex for the sake of having sex with somebody else? And he's like, well, women don't think like that. And she just starts cackling. And she's like, why aren't you jealous about me? You've never been jealous about me. And that really bothers her.
Yeah.
That he just thinks, it really bothers her that he just thinks, okay, she's my wife. She's devoted to me. I don't have to worry about it. I don't have to think about it. And she's kind of like, in a way, she's thinking, you don't know me at all. Because you don't know that I have thought about that.
And she even says, if you men only knew.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so then she, because Bill is like sure that Alice would never cheat on him. So then she starts telling the Cape Cod story. And the Cape Cod story is they were in Cape Cod like a year ago, and she saw this naval officer, and she said, oh, he just glanced at her, just a glance. But at that moment, she said she was ready to just like risk her entire life for one night with that guy. And so she goes on telling him all these things. And I don't know, like I just found that story so interesting because she says to Bill, like, but I also in that moment had never felt closer to you, and we were having like amazing sex, and we were talking about our future, and we were doing all these things, but in the back of my mind I was still thinking about this naval officer.
Which is what every man wants to hear. We've never been closer, but at the same time, I was thinking about Dwayne Johnson. I had the rundown playing in the background, but really, you and I were the most tender we ever been.
Okay, and the look on Bill's face, he looks like his whole world is just...
Well, this is the signature Kubrickian stare.
Falling apart.
Yeah.
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 And she says, the next morning, she realized that the naval officer had already left. He's checked out and he's gone. And she just says she was so relieved. And, just kind of like after that, she didn't think about him again. I don't know. So this story is kind of what launches the rest of the movie.
Yeah.
Because Bill just cannot handle the fact that his wife thought about cheating on him.
Well, here's the thing, too. It's a very key thing because at the end of Alice's incredible monologue, and I don't know why Nicole Kidman was an Oscar nominated for this film. She is extraordinary, and this is one of her absolute best performances, and I don't say that lightly. She's been brilliant for years, but this is one of her milestones as an actress. At the end of this monologue, we cut back to Bill, and he looks shattered, perturbed, about to implode, and he's about to say something. Who knows what he was about to say? About to say something, and then the phone rings. He's interrupted. This keeps happening for the rest of the film. He's constantly interrupted, whether by phone or by person. It's as you've indicated. I mean, it's as if this reality, this moment, this instance is being interrupted into a different turn of fate. Because if this scene had played out to the end, it would have been a different film. It would be a really different thing. But there are constant twists of fate occurring here where the story is going in one direction, a scene is going in a certain direction, but then suddenly these interruptions completely change the momentum and the direction of our main character, Dr. Bill. Mm-hmm. So Bill gets a phone call out of nowhere saying that, was it a mentor of his? I think.
I don't know. I think it was just a patient.
I don't know why I'm asking this with a question. I know this film so well.
I think it's just a patient.
Yeah, I believe. Yeah, it's a patient. So he suddenly has to head across town
because he's died.
Yes, the patient has died. So on the way over, it's one of the many shots of Dr. Bill, and Cruz is doing his brooding thing where he's thinking about he's having fantasies about his wife's fantasy, and they are They're hateful. They're painful. They're not black and white. They're in kind of a garish.
It is black and white.
Is it?
Yeah.
I kind of envision it like being kind of like dark blue, but no, maybe just
No,
black
it's
and white.
black and white.
All right.
It's Nicole Kidman. It's Alice and the naval officer.
Yeah.
Just getting it on.
Yeah, and it's
And each like time he fantasizes,
it gets worse and worse.
and
Yeah,
worse.
yeah.
Various stages of undress until it's just full on.
Yeah.
And so he just can't stop thinking about what her fantasy must have been. That's how my take on it.
Fantasy, also a possible change of direction. I mean, she's essentially telling her husband that, there's a chance where I thought of someone other than you. I almost left you. There was someone who...
I don't think she's saying she almost left him. I think what she was saying is, for a brief moment, like less than 24 hours, I was willing to risk everything. Risk it, not necessarily say goodbye to it. I'm not saying it's right, but...
No. And even if you do, it's fine. It's a movie. It's okay. We can talk about Bill and Alice critically. It's fine. It's a movie, folks. But no. The fact that she says the next morning he wasn't there and I felt such relief, I think it is this indication of, this could have been something that just consumed her.
Oh, totally. Yeah. And I think if the naval officer had given her more than a glance, she would have been like, okay, let's do this.
This would be a story that she's telling to the naval officer about how she left her husband Bill in New York. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Okay, so Dr. Bill goes to this guy's house and the daughter, is there with him. And I don't know how old this woman is.
Probably
around his age.
Yeah, around Tom Cruise's age. Yeah, this is
Okay.
played by the lovely Swedish actress Marie Richardson.
Okay, so he, they're talking about the father, and you can tell because I forgot about this scene.
Oh, you forgot about the punchline? That's
Yeah.
the best way. That's the best way to watch this scene if you don't know what's coming.
I forgot, and she, he's just like, oh, your dad was so proud of you. You gave everything to him. His last. Years, months of life, she must have been his caretaker. And all of a sudden, she just like starts kissing Dr. Bill. And she's like, I love you. And Dr. Bill's just like, what is happening? He is so shocked.
I love you. I love you.
Marion.
I love you. I don't want to go away with Carl.
Marion, I don't think you realize.
I do. Even if I'm never to see you again, I want at least to live near you.
Marion, listen to me. Listen to me. You're very upset right now, and I don't think you realize what you're saying.
I love you.
Marion, we barely know each other. I don't think we've had a single conversation about anything except your father.
I love you.
He's got great bedside manner because on the one hand, we can see how upset he is about this moment, but he's clearly a very studied doctor in terms of with people's feelings, the way he talks to people. It's like he's always in his office. He's always got that doctor's office thing going on. He tells her very
It's Marion.
He's not unkind, but he's very, very plain with her. He's like, we barely know each other.
Oh yeah, he goes, Marion, I don't even know you. I'm like,
we don't talk about anything other than your father,
I'm like, this is so embarrassing for her. Like, super weird. Just obviously she's been fantasizing about Dr. Bill and has created a relationship with him in her mind. And now it's her chance to just like tell him how she feels. And he's like, I am not a part of your weird whatever's going on in your head, and this is bizarre.
This is one of the many scenes in the movie where I thought, is this what it's like to be Tom Cruise? Does this happen to him all the time? Like a flight attendant on a plane is pouring his drink, and then this just happens.
I love you.
I don't care about Carl. Let's run away.
Oh yeah. So then, so Marion is with Carl, and Carl comes. He almost looks identical.
Yeah, thank you for pointing
to
that
Tom
out.
Cruise.
Two things I want to say really quickly about this. Carl, yeah, he looks so much like Dr. Bill. I think this is smart and intentional casting. Clearly, she's marrying him because he kind of looks like Dr. Bill. The other thing that I completely overlooked, and I shouldn't, shame on me, this is Thomas Gibson who played the villain in Far and Away.
Oh, see, and Far and Away.
I'm going to marry you, Shannon. Hell or high water. I'm going to marry you. We're going to run away together. Yeah, this is Thomas Gibbs, who played the bad guy in Far and Away. He was a romantic rival.
The Tom Cruise and Nicole Kidman movie, I do recommend.
Oh, man. Not Days of Thunder?
No, I love it. I love Far and Away.
All right. Well, I'm actually going to give Days of Thunder the win.
Oh, man.
For those two movies. I like Days of Thunder. I mean, I like Far and Away, too. It's great. It's an Irish Spring commercial.
Okay. Anyways. All right. So he
comes in.
Dr. Bill gets out of there with a quickness. He's like, I gotta go.
And the camera is tight on her.
Yeah, Marion.
As he leaves, it's like, oh,
she's just devastated.
Her life. This is the worst moment of her life. The greatest and the worst moment of her life at the same time.
Yeah.
It's great.
But
She's so good in this.
And I know this is a minor thought, but don't you think this is like her having like a pretend relationship with him in her mind, and then when she finally like, you know, kisses him and tells him that she loves him, it's one of those like just embarrassing scenarios.
I suspect this is what it's like every time Justin Bieber like walks into a lobby of a hotel. I mean, yeah, it's embarrassing.
But it also could have been the situation for Alice and this naval officer, because Alice is having these fantasies about the naval officer. And if she like actually approached him, he could have just been like, what? Like, who are you?
Lady, just say thank you for your service and go away, because this is very inappropriate.
Yeah. I'm married. I don't know what's happening. I'm actually on my honeymoon right now.
My wife is right there. Please stop kissing my eye.
Yeah. I don't know. I just thought of that.
That's really good, Joel. No, I like that. Yeah, because, I mean, because this is obviously the first of many sort of situations that Dr. Bell finds himself into, and they're all kind of a variant of testing his marriage, testing his resolve, testing his fidelity.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Yeah.
So Dr. Bill leaves, but as you have always told me about this movie, we never see him actually leave places.
Right. You only see him arrive. You have got these exterior shots, and Kubrick is very careful to show Dr. Bill go down hallways, go through doorways, leave a cab, but you never see him exit these places. There's no, and you might say, well, it's because the movie's already long. And no. Kubrick doesn't do things for accident. A man doesn't take 400 days to make a movie and oh, I forgot something. No. I
forgot to make him exit any doors.
This is a guy who leaves all of his chips on the table for every scene, every shot. He's famous for that. Even when he wasn't taking a very long time to make movies, his films have always been incredibly studied and he's very persnickety about details. So yeah, I think it's a very important detail that we never ever see Bill leave these places, which makes me wonder if he was ever in a lot of these places in the first place.
He leaves rooms, but he doesn't ever leave the exterior of a building.
Right.
That's kind of what we're saying,
I think that's a very important detail.
Okay.
Yeah.
So all of a sudden, he's just like, walking around New York?
You know how, for example, you're taking a walk in New York and you imagine yourself going to, say, a hooker's apartment, and you kind of have a fantasy of what that might be like, and suddenly your dream ends and you're back outside and you're back to, oh, this is real life. I was just having a fantasy, a waking fantasy back there. I think a lot of the film operates that way. That is one way to interpret this film.
So this is when he meets Domino, who meets him on the street, and she's obviously, a prostitute. And she's like, hey, you want to go back to my place? And they arrive at the red door of her building. And he's like, oh, you live here? She's like, yeah. All right. So he agrees to $150, and then who?
This is 1999. I think the going rate would be a lot more now.
It probably would be.
It's Vanessa Shaw of Ladybugs. I mean, she needs to ask for a lot more, especially from this guy.
Oh, Ladybugs. I didn't know that.
Yeah, she's from Ladybugs.
That's so funny. Okay.
She went from Ladybugs to Eyes Wide Shut. Not too bad.
Not too bad. Yeah. Okay. So he kisses her, but then they get
Phonus Interruptus.
Yes. And it's
It's Alice.
Mrs. Dr. Bill.
What a drag.
Yeah, Mrs. Dr. Bill.
She's like, hey Bill, when are you gonna come home and
what?
I want to finish this spliff.
What?
She's like in the kitchen making a bong.
All right. I have no idea what you're talking about. All right.
Sorry, that's my Cheech and Chong variation of the movie.
No. Okay.
No, so yeah. So it's a very innocent call. I mean, although she is eating like what are those cookies?
I don't know.
It's like a quote unquote healthy kind of Oreo, like Malamars or something. Clearly, she's got the late night munchies. I think.
Oh, right.
So yeah, so she's like, "When are you coming home, Bill?"
Yeah, and he says, "Oh, it's gonna be a while." You know, he's got to like hang out at this dead guy's house and say hi to all the relatives. It's very strange. Like the fact that
It's not a great story.
that she even is believing this is crazy.
But I do love the choice that Cruise is making as an actor, and there's a lot of choices that he makes that I'll defend because I love his performance in here. But he's staring at the wall. He's not like looking at Domino. He's like, "Oh, honey, it's going to be a long night. I'll be home." No, he is clearly the seduction is over. He is rattled to hear his wife's voice, and he very calmly, quietly, and almost in a very childlike way goes back to Domino, hangs up the phone with his wife, and says, "You know what? I'll pay you anyway, because
I gotta go.
Yeah, I gotta go. You're really nice,
Okay, so then he finds himself walking around New York again, and he just happens upon the cafe that
Cafe Sonata.
that Nick Nightingale works at. So he's like, "Oh yeah, Nick Nightingale. I'm gonna go check out my bro, my med
school, med school, med school."
Okay, so Nick is just finishing up his set, and so he has a drink with Bill, and I don't know, they're just chatting. And then he's like, "Yeah, I got to go where the work is, and I got a gig later, but it doesn't start till 2 a.m. And he's like, "What kind of gig is that?" And this is when he tells him about the secret party with the password.
As the conversation proceeds, note how the actors are leaning into the light, and it makes their faces look quite frightening and ghoulish. The conversation becomes sinister. They look sinister from the way that they are lit. And it goes from this playful banter between two guys who know each other and have had, all these great past experiences together. But it no longer becomes this dance of the familiar. It becomes this sense of one guy really almost blackmailing. It's like, "Hey, you got to tell me what's happening because you've already told me a little bit of this." Clearly, Nick should not have told this guy anything about what he does because he's about to perform for this very private party from these very private people at this secret location, and every time he does it, something very dubious and clearly uncouth is happening. And there's a lot of scenes in this film where this would be the setup for most films or any kind of thriller, and in this case, this movie is almost an hour old at this point. And we're getting into yet another scene that feels like, oh, yet another big twist, like another big life-changing moment is about to occur. Mm-hmm. Todd Field is playing Nick Nightingale. Todd Field is a director. He was a character actor. He was one of the storm chasers in Twister, believe it or not. Yeah, you've definitely seen him before. And Todd Field went to direct In the Bedroom, which is great, and Little Children, which is also excellent. He's fantastic. He has a new film coming out next year, his first in years. Todd Field and Marie Richardson and all these supporting actors, Sidney Pollack, of course, and so on and so forth. They're killing it in these single scenes. I love Todd Field in this scene. I love Marie Richardson as the daughter of the cadaver who lunges at Bill. There's Lily Sobieski in the following scene. There's so many actors who are in for just a couple of scenes and they are just crushing it. Mm-hmm. Yeah, but I love Todd Field in this movie so much because Nick Nightingale has charisma, but he's also someone like a lot of characters in this movie. He lives in a moral universe, but he does not have a properly wound moral compass. He is willing to live in the darkness and look away when things are not as they should be. And Bill is, in some cases, following suit. He's every encounter, every moment, every scene in this film. It's Bill becoming a little slimier, a little sleazier, being introduced to a world, a lifestyle, a way of thinking that is very, very much out of whack for a guy this square. Because this is a very square individual. This this is not Cruise as we, I mean, let's face it, this was not written for anyone remotely like Tom Cruise, which is why I love him so much in this. This was not tailor-made for him at all. He's playing a character here. Famously, Kubrick said, when he first thought about making this movie back in the day, he thought about Woody Allen and he thought about Steve Martin.
Oh, wow.
And you know what?
Different movie, but you could see it because Dr. Bill is not a heroic figure at all. No.
And Cruise is not playing him that way. There's something foolish about this character. He is, in some ways, he's really insufferable. He is someone who is so used to his privilege, so used to getting his way, that we see how much it rattles him when he is not, when the doors are not opened up for him, so to speak, but also how much this declaration from his wife really screws with him.
Oh, it screws with him so much. He's talking to Nick, and Nick is like, yeah, I play blindfolded, but sometimes the blindfold doesn't stay on, wink, wink. And the women at this party, oh my gosh. And you would expect like any normal person to be like, dude, that's freaking weird. Like, what are you doing? I hope they're paying you a ton of money because this sounds crazy. But no, he's like, you need to tell me the location of this party. And, I have the password now because he wrote it down on a napkin. And he's like, they'll never connect us. Just tell me. Like, we'll just go separately, And I'm thinking, that's insane.
It's a great ruse, and it also shows how lacking excitement Dr. Bill's life is, other than saving Victor once again from his hooker problem.
Yeah, but it's so crazy to hear about something like that. And then Nick says, well, you'd never be able to get in because you have to be masked and costumed. So what does Dr. Bill do? He goes and gets a costume in the middle of the night.
He stops at a costume shop that's owned by
called Over the Rainbow.
I'm sure I'm not saying his name. Rade Sherbegia, who is a character actor and later, he actually is in Mission Impossible 2 of all things. But he wound up being a very prolific actor. He's a Croatian. He plays the owner of this costume shop. He allows Bill to come in. It's probably the only scene of the movie that's kind of a dead space, but there's a lot of key things that happen here. So the scene could be a throwaway, but it's really interesting. Watching it last night, I have a new idea about this character because Bill says specifically, I need a mask, I need a hood, I need a tuxedo. And the way the owner of the shop reacts, I don't know, it hit me really different last night. I thought, oh, he's thinking, oh, you're one of those weirdos. You're one of those guys. Oh, we've already had...
You don't think that the people at this party own their own masks and...
I think everything in this film is connected, and it's because of some of the stuff that goes on in this scene and the stuff that goes on. And remember, in the first scene of the film, Bill and Alice are leaving their very comfortable world. Again, I am very envious of this apartment they live in, to be very clear about that. But they go to Victor's house. They establish not a soul. They don't know any of these people. This is not their world. This is too luxurious for them. But it's also a strange new environment. And I feel like everybody at that environment is connected with the environments that Bill encounters for the rest of the night. It's just an idea.
No,
But I think you can back it up just thinking about these scenes, and there is a connectivity to all of these characters.
I think a lot of the people from the Christmas party are at the freaky, deaky
at the
sex
scene
party.
we're about to get to. Yeah,
and maybe you're right. But
think about, and let me just jump to it because I don't know if I really want to linger on this part of the film. There's a character in it that's obviously, it's a bit of a callback to Stanley Kubrick's own adaptation of Lolita. The character is played by Lily Sobieski. It's almost a silent role, but it's established that the owner of the costume shop is literally pimping out his daughter.
Yeah.
Who is presumably underage.
Basically like trafficking situation happening in this costume shop.
It starts off as like a madcap scene, and it's almost a welcome. It's obviously it's a bit of sleaze, but it's almost a welcome bit of madcap comedy because it comes out of nowhere. It's so surprising. Mm-hmm. And then again, we're not there yet, but the film does call back to these characters, and we see, oh, this is very sick and disturbing,
very dark, yeah.
Which makes me think, yeah, if anybody is helping the operation on the hill, it's this guy.
Yeah, but again, I'm not disagreeing with you on that. I'm just thinking the people that are going to these sex parties, I can't imagine they don't already own.
I'm sure they bought it from this guy.
Oh, you think they bought their
because
stuff
of
from
the
him?
way, again, you guys say, oh, a mask is like, it seems, I don't know, the way the actor plays it, and I suspect, because like everything is intentional in this film, I suspect even the actor was like, I'm gonna play it like, maybe like, oh, you're one of those, you're going to that thing. Oh, okay, yes, the usual. But as it's established, not only is he renting this stuff, but Bill also tips his hat to get a little ahead of it by arriving in a cab, which none of these none of these high muckety muck freaky deakies are going to do.
Coming in,
lowered it by helicopter, or
they all have chauffeurs.
Yeah.
Yeah.